You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Can Jayden Daniels win the Heisman? So last week we did talk about this because people had asked me the question. And so, and forgive me, this wasn't last week. It was 2 weeks ago. It was the week of the bye week. It was after the Ole Miss game. And we looked at a lot of the Heisman odds. And at the time, after the Ole Miss game, Jayden Daniels' Heisman odds were at plus 18,000. Like, he was right there in the same group as, like, KJ Jefferson. Just extreme long shots, really just on the board to be on the board. LSU had lost 2 games at that point. His statistics were significantly lagging the national leaders, but he had back-to-back really good games against Florida and Ole Miss, where he accounted for 11 touchdowns, 6 against Florida, 5 against Ole Miss. Well, we're having a very different conversation today, because after Jayden Daniels in LSU beat Alabama, and he had the game he did in which he had the touchdown run in overtime. He threw the touchdown pass to Mason Taylor. He had the beautiful 2-point conversion pass to Mason Taylor as well. Jayden Daniels' Heisman odds are all the way up to plus 1,800. There's only 7 players that have better Heisman odds right now at DraftKings than Jayden Daniels. And then this today, ESPN.com asked their draft analysts, like, risers and fall, players rising and falling in their draft rankings, et cetera. And they also asked, who do you think wins the Heisman Trophy? Well, Reed picked C.J. Stroud, Miller picked Caleb Williams from USC, and Mel Kiper Jr. picked Jayden Daniels. This is at ESPN.com today. He writes, let's go with a bit of a long shot candidate to spice things up. LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. Why not? He has 24 total touchdowns, 14 passing, and just 1 interception. He just had a Heisman moment in the win over Alabama, running for a touchdown in overtime. If he can pad his stats these last 3 regular season games, he'll get a chance to impress voters in the SEC title game against Georgia. Yes, the Tigers will be big underdogs, but if he helps them pull off an upset, he'll be set up to win it. The Arizona State transfer is a remarkable runner with nice patience in the pocket. He has flourished under Brian Kelly this season. Interesting little note there about him having patience in the pocket, which is something that fans criticized him for early in the season, which clearly there's a conflicting opinion there from someone who covers the draft. And I had someone send this to me earlier. When you look at total yardage, so if you combine running and passing yardage, only Caleb Williams and Hendon Hooker have more total yards than Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels has more yards accounted for than C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Now, in part, that's because of his rushing total. So right now, Jayden Daniels, his total yardage is 26-13, 24 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, when you look at Jayden, just on his passing yardage, he's a hair under 2,000 yards passing for the season. And as we mentioned, the 14 passing touchdowns. So for Jayden, he's at 1994 passing, 14 touchdowns, 1 pick, 619 yards rushing, and 10 touchdowns. So the 24 touchdowns accounted for. 14 passing, 10 rushing. Realistically, he's going to have to hit certain benchmarks and win out. So most importantly, it would be he'll have to win out and then have a big-time performance in the SEC championship game against Georgia and win it. Because a lot of voters will hold on to that ballot until that final Saturday, that championship Saturday, before they submit their ballots. I think he's got to pad his stats over these next 3 games and then play well in the SEC championship game. To get to 3,000 pass yards, he's going to have to average 250 pass yards over the next 4 games. And to get to 1,000 rushing yards, he's going to have to average right at about 100 yards per game to get to 1,000 rushing yards. If he does that, if he gets to 3,000 passing, 1,000 rushing, and accounts for 40 touchdowns, which is a very real possibility now, he's at 24. Could he get another 16 touchdowns over 4 games? That's realistic. Certainly the 35 range is realistic. Throw for 20, run for 15. That's realistic. He would have a shot. What you really need, though, is you got to root for chaos. Because, when we're looking at these, we looked at the DraftKings Heisman odds yesterday. And when you look at them closely, C.J. Stroud this last week with Ohio State struggling on the road against Northwestern, he kind of took a little bit of a hit. As did Hendon Hooker, who was basically what with Stroud before they got strangled at Georgia this past week. So Stroud is now the betting favorite at plus 140. Hooker's at plus 290. They were pretty much even. Then you got a big drop-off. Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, is at plus 750. Let's get real. A running back's not winning the Heisman Trophy, at least not a running back from Michigan. Then there's Caleb Williams at plus 900. Lurking is Stetson Bennett at plus 1,000. And then Bo Nix at plus 1,200. Drake May from North Carolina is at plus 1,400. He'll have a ton of stats, but his team's just not going to be good enough for him to win it. And then there's Jayden Daniels at plus 1,800. After that, it's the real massive drop-off to Max Duggan and Bryce Young at plus 4,000, DTR plus 5,000, Jahmyr Gibbs at plus 8,000. So you understand this really right now is an 8-man race. And Jayden Daniels is running the 8th leg of the 8-man race, but he's in the race right now with 4 games to play. And if LSU wins their next 3 and he pads his stats, I would submit to you, and I'll make this prediction today, if LSU wins their next 3, and goes to Atlanta at 10-2, and Daniels continues on the pace he is, meaning he would probably wrap up the regular season somewhere around 2,700 passing yards, 850, 900 rushing yards, in the 30 touchdown range, he will have a seat in New York. I'll make that prediction today. Now, it's a big if. They got to win their next 3, and those stats have to be what I just suggested. If that happens, he will have a seat in New York, because you're unlikely to have anybody run away with this. It could happen, but at this point, it's unlikely someone just runs away with it. Hendon Hooker, I think, had that opportunity had they beaten Georgia, but that ship has sailed now. And what happens is there's no set number of players that can be invited to New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. The Heisman Trust essentially looks at the final balloting and says, okay, how many people were within reach of this, and make the determination. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 5. I think the year Tyrann Mathieu went in 2011, there were 5 or 6 finalists there. And RG3 won it. And Tyrann was a distant player, but he was worthy of having a seat. And I do think that Jayden Daniels, if LSU goes 10-2, and he has 2,700 passing yards, 900 rushing yards at the end of the regular season, he's accounted for 35 touchdowns, I think Jayden Daniels will have a seat in New York City. And if they beat Georgia, he'll have a chance to win it, a legitimate chance to win it. After watching Georgia this last week against Tennessee, it's really hard for me to imagine anybody at this point beating Georgia. They just look like they're on another level. Like they can crank that intensity meter up to 15 if they need to. But, brother, you play as I said, it's why they play the game. And we'll see how it plays out. This is a conversation, man. All these conversations we're having about LSU. Looking at playoff rankings and Heisman numbers. This ain't September, y'all. We're going to the second week of November, and we're having these conversations. What a wild world it is. It's been a fun ride, too. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.